Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you all for being here. So, the value of knowledge in the age of disinformation. What is knowledge? What is disinformation? Who gets to decide which is which? And most importantly of all, how do they do it? Now, this might seem like a very of-the-moment, current kind of problem, but actually, as problems go, it is really nothing new. So let me paint a scene for you. The year is 325 CE. The place is the city of Nicaea in Bithynia, northwestern Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. You are sitting in a council of very angry men. You have 250 bishops, leaders of early Christian communities drawn from 3 different continents. It's July, it's hot, and everybody is shouting at everybody else. And they've been at it for nearly 2 months. Topics of disagreement include, amongst other things, the date of Easter, the precise relationship between God the Father and God the Son, and whether, as an act of piety, it's okay to castrate yourself. Any minute now, in an act of astonishing religious unanimity, the squabbling bishops are going to put aside those weeks of disagreement, and they are going to coalesce around a single statement, an assertion of Christian truth, a disavowal of heretical disinformation. This was, of course, the First Council of Nicaea, and the end result were 20 canons, or religious laws, and the signing of the Nicene Creed, that statement of core Christian beliefs that many churches still adhere to today within the Latin Western tradition, but also within the Orthodox Greek one. So you might be thinking that surely this is a matter of belief, not of knowledge, and that beliefs are looser somehow and woollier. But that would be thinking with a modern perspective. From a 4th century point of view, this is simply not how they saw things. In their own minds, the bishops at the Council of Nicaea were not debating anything as woolly as fluffy beliefs. They were there to discern truth from falsehood. Christian truth, but truth all the same. And it was no small thing to forge consensus around this truth in early Christianity, which was, after all, characterized by a cacophony of different liturgies and philosophies and teachings and splinter groups. In order to forge this consensus, the bishops had to agree what was true Christian knowledge and what was the disinformation of heresy. The process of distinguishing the two was fraught and heated. People's lives and their livelihoods were very much at stake. Now, I know from my own experience, things can get heated even when no one's life is at stake. So last week, I was in a meeting which had almost nothing in common with the First Council of Nicaea, apart from we had the same fundamental underlying goal. We, as a group, had collectively to decide what was valid and valuable as knowledge and what was not. The occasion was a meeting of an editorial board for an academic journal, of which I'm the lead editor. The journal publishes cutting-edge new research into the archaeology of Anatolia and the Black Sea region. It's called Anatolian Studies, in case you're looking for Christmas present ideas. The way it works is this. Articles are submitted to the journal, and we as editors are supposed to judge their scientific merit. Articles which are deemed to be hopeless are just quietly putting them in. Articles which are perfect, which is very, very few, go straight to publication. But most of them, we return them to the authors, asking for very specific revisions, so the article can then be resubmitted to us for a second round of editorial scrutiny. It's a process known as scientific peer review, and the idea is that, as an academic author, any possible inaccuracies, errors, or weaknesses in your argumentation can be picked up by your peers during this process, thereby ensuring high-quality scientific outputs, which is great in theory. But at the end of the day, it boils down to me and my colleagues sitting in judgment. deciding what we deem worthy and unworthy, separating out true archaeological knowledge on the one hand from the disinformation of weak data sets, poor reasoning, and aliens built the pyramids kind of fantasies on the other. Both my little meeting and the First Council of Nicaea are examples of the same basic thing: a select group of people discerning truth from falsehood. And I could have chosen any number of examples to illustrate this. From antiquity, from my own field of expertise, I could have talked to you about the codification of texts, such as the Bible, which didn't happen, as people often think, at the Council of Nicaea, but instead was a much longer and more gradual process. A bit closer to home for me, drawing directly on my own particular research, I could have talked to you about the creation of the Iliad, that epic poem that we usually associate with the figure of Homer, but which actually represents the culmination of two quite distinct literary processes. First, the joining together of many different strands of oral tradition to form a single poetic composition, which happened around the end of the 8th century BCE. And second, the editing and compilation and canonization of a standardized text from a myriad of different variants, which happened around the 2nd century BCE. And there are lots of other examples, not just from antiquity, of course, of people doing essentially the same thing. Designing a school curriculum or a university curriculum. This involves judging what knowledge is acceptable, important, desirable, and what knowledge isn't. The same is true for anybody editing a newspaper or a periodical, or indeed anyone commissioning current affairs or documentary programming for television. In all of these cases, and many, many more, we're dealing with the same basic underlying process. This is a process by which the few, so people who are deemed to have superior expertise or judgment or just taste, the few determine what is knowledge and what is disinformation, and their decision becomes codified or made official for the many. And this, I think, is good and important. We really do need people to discern real knowledge, to distinguish it both from sloppy errors and inaccuracies on the one hand, and also from deliberate lies on the other. That is really important, and I think in this moment we're all keenly aware of it. But there's a thin line between deciding the truth like this and cancel culture, the banning of books, the burning of books, the burning of people who write books deemed to be unacceptable or dangerous. And I think we can all come up with examples from history where some kinds of knowledge were indeed labeled as disinformation, where they were policed, where they were suppressed, and where the act of distinguishing between knowledge and disinformation became a mechanism of political control. If we go back to the Council of Nicaea, after the agreement of the Creed, the teachings of one particular Alexandrian pastor, Arius, became singled out as especially heretical. Arius and his leading followers were banished, their properties were seized, and all of his writings were burned, and anyone found in possession of them was sentenced to death. Religion certainly furnishes us with many similar examples, and not just from the persecution of heresies, which happened in almost all major faiths, not just Christianity, but also Islam, Judaism, and Zoroastrianism. But also in religious opposition to alternative knowledge systems more generally, in obstruction of scientific advancement during the Enlightenment, in the rejection of some types of folk knowledge as witchcraft, or perhaps more recently, seeking violently to overthrow capitalist Western degeneracy. But beyond religion, many, many other examples could perhaps include the banning of local languages by colonial authorities, such as the outlawing of Irish in the 16th century, or of the banning of Native American languages in the 19th. We could also, of course, talk about the censorship of free speech and news reporting in dictatorial political regimes, Stalin's Russia, North Korea, Trump's America. In all of these cases, we are still talking about the same basic underlying process, where the few decide what is knowledge for the many. It's all the same, isn't it? Apart from it isn't. Of course. The difference is not in what these people are doing, but in how they are doing it. When I sit in judgment for my little academic journal, I do so bound by a set of regulations that lay out the remit of the journal and that set the guidelines on length, style, and format. I sit in judgment following a very strict protocol governing the process of peer review, requiring the anonymization of submissions to avoid bias, as well as the written consultation of at least 2 experts in relevant subfields. Finally, and most importantly, when I sit in judgment, every single step of the process is transparent, with documentation made available so that people can challenge my decision if they want to. And this is the key: accountability, the right of reply, the right to dispute, to challenge, to question, to disagree. The same was not true after the First Council of Nicaea. The debate during the council itself was fierce, but afterwards everybody was expected to step into line, and consensus was policed. It was policed by the same man who had convened the council in the first place, the same man who had sent the invitations, arranged everybody's transportation, sorted out the venue, catered the meals, and sat like an elephant in the room throughout all the debates, listening quietly. He was, of course, the Emperor Constantine. Constantine the Great. Constantine, who issued the Edict of Milan in 313, legalizing Christianity. Constantine, who minted coins with the tagline, Consensus Omnium. Everyone agrees. And everyone did agree, because Constantine made sure of it. Everyone agreed, everyone fell into line, and at the head of that line was Constantine. And here lies the nub. A small group of specialists deciding what is knowledge and what is disinformation is not in itself problematic. In fact, I think it's rather crucial. What is problematic is when there are absolutes of power involved. Either power dictating which way the decision goes, or power preventing any challenge or disagreement afterwards. In this moment, I think we're going through a bit of a difficult patch, as suggested by the fact we're all here tonight talking about the value of knowledge in an age of disinformation. The traditional bastions of knowledge are being challenged from all directions, authority undermined, expertise scorned. And I'm actually not that worried about this, per se. Challenges to knowledge are a feature rather than a flaw of our system. We have built a system where such challenges are permitted, even encouraged, in the belief that the system is robust enough to take it. And, like an article under academic peer review, our system of knowledge will be strengthened by testing it with disinformation. What does worry me, though, is power. Disinformation might test our systems of knowledge, but absolutes of power will break them. Power that seeks to ban certain theories or ways of thinking, power that seeks to stifle, power that seeks to suppress, power that seeks to silence. Any of us here who believe in the value of knowledge do have a duty then, not to fight against disinformation per se, but rather to fight against the power structures that would prevent our disagreement with it. The power structures that would block us from dealing effectively with disinformation. What we need to fight is the power that wants us to shut up, that wants us to be left with nothing but a creed. Consensus omnium. Everyone agrees. Thank you.